Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. It's lovely to see the names already coming in. You all know what to do, right? So welcome. My name is Luan, and I will be presenting to you this afternoon. I am from the sunny and very hot Cape Town, South Africa. It would be wonderful to see where you are, so please say hi in the chat. Tell us your name, tell us where you are, and then we'll go over a few house rules before we get started with today's webinar. Just a little bit about myself. I have been a teacher for a very long time, over 13 years. I've loved every second of it, and today I hope to share this knowledge with you. I have taught students from all around the world. Excited to share what I know with you and to join you and to be part of your journey today. Right, so just before we get started and before we say hello to everybody, we will be answering questions about halfway through. So the presentation will be happening first, and then about 30 minutes or so before we finish, fantastic webinar piling up. But my suggestion is hold on to them until the end so that you can punch them in and I can see them immediately. If you start filling those questions in now or very soon, I might miss them when we get to Q&A time. Also note that the questions that I will answer today will particularly relate to the topic being presented today. We will not be answering other academic questions, but of course, as usual, if you have any questions outside of today's topic, of course, you can send them to tutor support, where tutors like myself are waiting to answer those questions. Right, so I see the names piling in. I see the various locations everywhere from Spain to Cape Town to Malta to Canada. Welcome. It's fantastic to have you all here. Right, so I'm going to get started straight away because this is the kind of webinar, the topic today is really one where we have loads of questions towards the end. So I'm going to get right into it so that we can answer all those important, vital questions that you might have a little bit later. Right, so let's get going. So I'm sure, as you know, you've joined this webinar, is that today's webinar is all about that assignment B. So assignment B is a tricky one, and many people tend to think that it is perhaps the most challenging of our assignments because it's got to do with grammar. And a lot of us use grammar beautifully. That's why we're teachers. But teaching the grammar, sharing that knowledge, simplifying those explanations, well, that's where the tricky bit comes in. So the assignment encapsulates all of that. And that is why it is such a vital assignment, but also one that tends to make people a little bit concerned. Lots of us have done grammar, but not taught grammar for a very long time or never before. So today's assignment is just for you. Right, so let's get started. So when we start the webinar, it's important to know what we're going to discuss, what we're going to be looking at today. I think it gives you an idea of what's coming, and it makes you feel secure and confident with the information that you're going to receive and share. Right, so in today's webinar, we'll be exploring the following: what the assignment assesses, why we have this assignment, why the assignment is the way it is, the form that you're meant to teach in the assignment, the structure of a grammar lesson, the various documents that you're going to have to download and work on, and then also a few very useful tips to help you get started. So remember, these tips, and this is a tip, are not just to help you get started, but actually to pass your assignment. So my suggestion is get that notepad out, get that pen or pencil, and start taking notes. Of course, you can rewatch this webinar or other webinars done on similar content from the past, but it is also useful to write things down because it makes sense to you later on when you read it. Right, so that's what we're going to cover today. A lot, but I'm sure you're ready for it. All right, so the very first thing that we're going to look at is what the assignment assesses, what the assignment includes, but more importantly, what we need from you, right? So the assignment serves as an assessment of the following: your ability to create a grammar lesson, your understanding of a very particular grammar lesson structure, which is the PPP lesson plan, the present, practice, and produce lesson plan, your understanding of meaning, form, and pronunciation. Lots of acronyms here. MFP, meaning, form, pronunciation. The meaning of the grammar that you're teaching, the form, the structure of that grammar, and the pronunciation aspects involved in producing that piece of grammar. We also want to assess your teacher language techniques, like eliciting instead of telling, and concept checking, understanding. So these are all things that we assess when, or had in mind when we created this assignment. Right, so the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the form that you're meant to teach during this assignment or during this lesson that you're creating. It's a very particular form, the first conditional form. And there's an example sentence on the board for you. So the first conditional sounds rather scary, but if you look at the example, it's something that you use in speaking every single day. If it is hot tomorrow, I will go to the beach. In Cape Town, right now it's about 34 degrees, 6 p.m., it's hot. I should be at the beach. But this is a perfect example of a first conditional sentence. If it is hot tomorrow, I will go to the beach. If I go to the beach, I will swim. If I see my friend, I will say hello. In this assignment, we only want you to use if and will. That's the only structure. And the important thing is that you research this target language back to front before you approach your assignment. Because this assignment doesn't only assess your ability to create and teach a grammar form and your understanding of a lesson plan, but also your understanding of this particular target language. And I think the most important thing is that the teacher gets the grammar before we teach. Right, so the documents are quite important. The documents that you are meant to download. Now, where are these? They're on the assignment page, right? And the assignment page has got all the instructions on that particular page. But also, more importantly, the documents that you're meant to download and work on in order to produce the assignment. So the first document is the PPP grammar lesson table. Then we have the all-important lesson plan. We also have a teacher language document, a board plan, and a materials file. So these are by default in MS Word. That's the program we've used. So that's the program you would need, or you can find in free alternatives to use. But then on submission, these files must be converted to PDF. Before you submit. And I think this is for a lot of reasons, but also that no one can tamper with your work once you submit it. This is very, very important. If you have submitted your files in MS Word, do contact us at User Support. Tell us to revert your submission, and we will send it right back to you so that you can re-upload your files in PDF. All right, so those are the files that you're going to be working with. Make friends with those terms because they will be the core of your assignment. Right, so in addition to these files that you're going to be downloading from the assignment page, we've also spoiled you a little and we've provided a model assignment. So we've actually included all the files for you to look at so that you can understand exactly how we want the templates filled out. So the model assignment files are a complete assignment to help you see A, how we want the templates filled out, and B, just to guide you and see how much detail we want in the assignment, what kind of details we're looking for. Do bear in mind that while the models are based on the present perfect tense, an entirely different structure, your assignment must be done on the first conditional. This is very important to remember. So the model also serves as a guide, But remember that its content really should not be copied. One, because it's for an entirely different form. And two, we really need your work to be your own. Your wording, your approach, your ideas, your context, all that really needs to be your own. So the idea is to use the model files as a guide, but then of course to submit your own work when you're ready. All right, so now we're going to take a look at each file, what they entail, so that when you do download them, when you finally look at them, they make sense to you, right? So the very table, right? So the PPP grammar table serves as a summary of your lesson and an assessment of your knowledge of the target language. Now, when I say target language, I mean the first conditional. We need to see in this PPP table that you've understood the meaning, the form, the pronunciation of the first conditional, and how it all forms part of the PPP lesson. Remember to provide an answer for each and every category in this table. If anything is missing, we are going to send it right back to you, and we're going to ask you to provide all the answers. Everything has got to be filled in on the PPP table. All right, so now we're going to look at probably one of the most important files in your assignment, and that is the lesson plan, right? So the lesson plan, basically, think about it this way. We cannot see or watch you performing this lesson. We cannot watch you or observe you teaching this lesson. So the lesson plan is really, it's our eyes. We're able to see and understand your lesson by reading this lesson plan. We can visualize what's going to happen by the details you've provided in your lesson plan. So the very first page of the lesson plan, the structure of your lesson, the skeleton of your lesson, like the aims, the objectives, the assumed knowledge, what your students know prior to this lesson, anticipated problems, issues that you foresee. And remember on this first page to fill out every single section. Some of the information has been provided for you in the assignment notes. And of course, these notes you wouldn't have to fill in, but everything else that's blank, that's your cue. That's exactly where you fill in all the information. And remember, it's got to be done on the first conditional, even though the models are done on the present perfect. Right, and then on the following pages of the lesson plan, you'll see columns. The columns are for the stages of the lesson, the individual stage aims of the lesson too, the timing of each stage, the interaction, who is interacting with who at a particular stage or during a particular activity. Is it teacher and student interacting or pair work, student to student? That's what interaction entails. So all those things need to be filled in because remember, again, that lesson plan gives us an idea of what your lesson is going to look like in a normal setting, right? So fill in everything, consult the model lesson plan if you need a reminder as to what each section of the lesson plan entails. And then at the bottom of the lesson plan, you'll see a space allocated or left there for you, and that's the paragraph. And the paragraph is basically a rationale telling us why you've chosen that particular task, why you've chosen those controlled practice tasks, why you've chosen this freer practice, why you've chosen those materials. Just a little bit of an explanation, your reasons, your motivation behind some of the activities in your lesson plan. So important stuff, necessary for us because this is all part of the grading criteria. Right, and also remember that word limits have been included. So look at the bottom, see what the word limit is, try your best to fit into those requirements. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is a reminder of the various stages in a lesson plan. I feel it's necessary because we forget, and there are so many lesson plans or lesson plan structures in the course material. But for this particular assignment, we want a particular structure, right? So we're looking for, remember, I mentioned this earlier, the PPP lesson plan. Let's look at the stages. The first stage is the all-important warmer. The second stage is the first of those 3 Ps. the presentation stage, where you are introducing your students to the grammar for the very first time, right? And then we have the practice stage, and this is often called the controlled practice stage. So if you see this in the templates or the models, it's not wrong. It's just another word for the practice stage. Then we have the produce or production stage, and this is also referred to as the freer practice stage. And then finally, a plenary right at the end where you consolidate learning and you help your learners see that they've actually achieved all the aims set out at the start of the lesson. So those are your stages. Go over them in the course material, ask questions, and do send us a ticket if anything is unclear. We'd like you to pass this assignment. All right. So the very next thing we're going to look at is the teacher language, right? So the teacher language is another one of those files that gives us an idea of what your lesson is going to sound like. We need to hear the words you will use when speaking to your students. We need to hear how you're going to address them. We need to hear what you're going to say to them. So the only way we can do that, because we can't watch you teaching the lesson, is by asking you for a script of everything you will say. So remember, the teacher language file is divided into two sections. And we're going to look at the very first section first, right? So the first section, this is where we need to see you presenting the new target language. And the second section is where we want to hear or see a verbal instruction that you will give to one of your tasks. How you're going to tell your students how to get them started on the task. The actual words you're going to say. I cannot stress that enough, because if these two sections are not in direct speech, we will be sending your assignment back to you, because remember, they help us hear what you'll sound like when you're teaching this particular form. All right, so the first section that we're going to look at with teacher language is eliciting the target language. We want you to get the students to produce a sentence in this new grammar before you use it, before you reveal it. How are you going to do that? By asking very simple, graded questions using your warmest context to elicit the model sentence. Get students to gradually piece together that very first model sentence before you use it yourself. Because remember, if you're using this new tense, this new structure that you're teaching them, if you're using it in speaking, they don't understand it yet, so they don't know what you're saying. So it's very important that you elicit the model sentence rather than just using it or giving it away. Right. So the very next thing is eliciting form. So form is structure. And use your model sentence here. That model sentence that you've elicited, use that one to elicit the form. Get students to identify the subject. Get students to identify the tense in the first clause, the tense in the second clause. Can they see the connector? What is the connector? Help them get that structure right. This is so important because they write that down and they use that structure that you've elicited and put on the board. They use that in order to practice and produce the target language later on. When you elicit form, label your model sentence as you elicit. Ask them, where is the subject, class? They will say I. Write that above I. What is the tense of the first clause? And also remember to grade your language. This is so important. What do we mean by that? Well, grading your language is using simple language, not incorrect language, but simple language, so that your learners know exactly what you're saying. Reduce your TTT, your teacher talking time. Let your students do the talking. Elicit structures, don't give them away. Elicit examples, do not give it away. Elicit the form of your sentence, do not give it away. This will make your lesson so much more student-centered. Right. And the last bit of target language is concept checking. So instead of asking your students, do you understand? We ask them these little questions to check understanding. I like to call them trick questions because we're asking little questions sort of embedded and hidden, and how they answer tells us whether or not they've understood the target language. So this concept checking technique is to check understanding of function. Function is meaning. In other words, when they read that sentence on the board, do they understand the meaning, the scenario? Do they understand that that person is talking now, but referring to something in the future? Do they understand that it's not happened yet? Do they understand that that second activity depends very much on the first? So the concept questions that you ask really need to check understanding of these aspects of function. Ask as many as you'd like because they're awfully useful, but keep them graded, keep them simple, and keep them closed. Right. And then we spoke about the second part of the target language, and that's the instruction. An instruction to one of your tasks. Remember, this has got to be in direct speech. It must be simple, broken up into simple steps, and include a few instruction checking questions to make sure that they understand what to do before they start the task. So say, for example, you've given them the instruction, told them, right, you're working in pairs, you're going to do this together, you're going to answer questions 1 to 5, and you have 10 minutes, right? That's the instruction. What are the instruction checking questions? Are you working alone or are you working in pairs? How much time do you have for this activity? Are you answering all the questions? No. Are you answering 1 to 6? Yes. Those are what instruction checking questions are, and they're useful in the classroom because they really give us an idea of whether or not our students have understood the instruction before they begin the task. So these are some of the things we'd like to see in your teacher language section 2, where you give an instruction to one of your tasks. Right. So the very next thing we're going to be looking at is that board plan. So the board plan has got to be a visual representation of the presentation stage of your lesson. That stage, after you've set the context in your warm-up, a nice little topic, now you're going to elicit the sentence. You're going to write the form on the board. You're going to maybe include an all-important timeline. And the board plan has got to be a visual tool for us to look at. We need to see on the board what your students will see on the board. Include the aspects specified at the top of the template. No dialogue, no lengthy wordy dialogues on the board plan. Just write on the board plan or put on the board plan what you want us to see, because this is exactly what your students will see on the board during the presentation stage of your lesson. So keep it simple, but keep it engaging for your students. Look at their age, look at the level, and see what works on the board plan. So on the board, we also get to use a timeline. And a timeline is used to express function. It really should show your students sort of a visual representation of the sentence. Where in time do the actions in the sentence take place? Keep it simple. Don't label it with tenses, label it with actions. With a very simple time frame, past, now, and future. And then on the timeline, insert the 2 actions of your example sentence. Keep it clear, keep it simple. I always say that grammar lessons should not be bells and whistles and frills and all fancy things. Your students get distracted by all of that. Have an engaging context, a few good tools, and you're good to go. All right, so the very next file that we're going to be talking about is the materials file, right? So the materials file has got to be included. Please don't see it as an optional file, because the materials file tells us or shows us everything that your students will use during the lesson. That could include imagery, that could include the controlled practice worksheets, those gap-full worksheets. Put that in, and don't only insert links. Your marker is not going to click on links to see your materials. We need to see it copied and pasted, the full contents, or you could even insert a screenshot. But remember, again, as soon as there are only links in your materials, you will most likely receive your assignment back from your tutor, and you'll have to redo that section. And remember to include all your materials. Keep them simple. Keep them very, very clearly labeled. Your marker needs material or what particular worksheet relates to what part of the lesson. Right. And then also remember to reference all your materials that you source from other sources. Make sure that you reference everything. This is, of course, a legal situation, but also it's good for you. to find materials that you used before, to find them and recycle them for another lesson. It's a good habit to get into. And that brings me to the very next file, and that is the bibliography file. So the bibliography, please don't feel that it's an optional file. It must be included. And here you need to include references for all your materials, whether it be a worksheet that you found on another website, whether it be some imagery that you wanted to use during your warmer to engage your students and set the context of your lesson. All this material needs to be referenced in the bibliography. Now, in the assignment notes, something that I did not mention earlier, we send you a referencing guide. And in the referencing guide, we show you exactly how we want your sources to be referenced. We are aware that you won't be able to provide every single bit of detail, but provide as much as you can. The website where you found it, maybe the author of the document, the date you accessed it on is very important. As much information as you possibly can. And then also remember, in your bibliography, do not again just provide links as references. A link to a task or a link is to an activity that you found online or in a book, it's not enough. We need the link, but we also need the date you accessed, as mentioned earlier, the website where you found this, maybe the author, as much information as you possibly can. All right, so that brings us to the end of a lot, and we've now looked at quite a few things. We've looked at what the assignment assesses. We've looked at the target language that you're meant to teach. We've also looked at the various files. We've looked at teacher language and what this entails. So I think that we've covered quite a bit. We've covered a lot of important information to help you get started on this assignment. I do know that it's a lot. I do know that it can be quite intimidating to do the assignment, especially if you've not taught grammar before. But please remember, bear in mind that our course has been designed taught before. So this is new to everyone, and we take that into consideration, which is why we have models, which is why we have examples, which is why we have tutor support that can help you every step of the way. I think this is important. I would want this kind of support if I were actually doing something like this. Right, so also remember that all our previous webinars are available on the TEFL Academy YouTube channel. And yeah, you can rewatch them as many times as you wish. If you missed a webinar, you can find this webinar. We archive absolutely all of them, unless there were technical glitches. Everything should be available. Even this webinar will be available within a few days, and you can rewatch as many times as you need to. But as I always say, take notes. Write things down, because what I say, what I show, you might interpret in a slightly different way that makes more sense to you. Write it down. All right. And then also remember, if you have any questions outside of today's webinar, but also questions that you might remember about today's content at a later stage, you can, of course, send a ticket to tutor support, and we will get back to you we say within 24 hours, but we get back to you a lot sooner than that. All right. So we've come to the very interesting part of today, and that is Q&A. Now, Q&A is where you get to ask all your important questions about the assignment, and where I will try to answer as many of your questions as I possibly can. So please write your questions in the chat, and I will absolutely give you assistance and offer suggestions and help as far as I can. All right, I see those questions coming in already. I'm going to tell you to write them right now so that I can actually get to them, because if you send them too late, we might not be able to get to everything. All right, so we're going to be looking at this right now. I've already got some questions. Let's look at the first one. All right. I'm going to display it on the board so that you can all understand that on the screen for you. All right. So Jane says, hi Jane, and thank you for your question. Jane says, I've never been a teacher before. I find timing is really difficult to work out. Any tips? And you know what, Jane? It was for me too, because you get told by the school or by the online platform or by the TEFL Academy that your lesson has got to be, for example, 1 hour. And it's very difficult to work out the timing of the various stages, which is why we've included timing in our model assignment. You'll be able to see more or less what each stage should really, how long each stage should really take, and what that stage involves. Now, Jane, remember that your lesson plan has got to be a little bit flexible. There's got to be a little bit of leeway. Because some stages take a little bit longer than you've prepared for, and some stages finish a lot quicker than you want, or that you prepared for. So do bear in mind that the lesson plan, even when you're teaching that lesson, it is a flexible tool. But I would say look at the model lesson plans. For example, for me personally, a warmer, for example, shouldn't take longer than 5 minutes. Your presentation stage, that's the bulk of your teaching. It could take anything between 15 and 20 minutes. Your practice stage, again, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. And finally, your produce stage, maybe also around 10, 15 minutes. So I would say play around with those time frames, snip off, add where you can, but remember that students need practice and produce time. For me, that is so, so important. But absolutely take a look at the model lesson plan. It helps. All right. All right, so a question about the bibliography, a good question. When doing the references for the bibliography, do we use MLA or APA format of citations? I think we've got the Harvard system going there. Have a look in our referencing file. It's all laid out for you. But remember, we're not going to be overly pedantic about this as long as you've tried to reference everything and added as much information about that resource that you possibly can. That's all good. Pictures, we only need the hyperlink. We just need the link to the actual picture. And maybe I always find the date that you've accessed it quite helpful. But again, we're not overly pedantic as long as everything is referenced. We're not going to fail you, for example, if you forget one little detail. But have a look at the referencing file, Harvard style of referencing, all laid out in the referencing document. I still use it. Even though I'm marking assignments, I still use that referencing file for my work every day. All right. Okay, so I've got a question here from, I think it's Vinius or Vignus. Not sure if I'm saying your name correctly. I'm so sorry if I'm not. I'm working on assignment B, the PPP plan and paragraph. The presentation stage has so many parts. How detailed should it be? So the presentation stage, yes, it's where you're introducing the target language for the very first time. We need to see how. So it's got to be pretty detailed. And again, I'm going to tell you to use the model as a guide. I do understand that it's done on an entirely different target language, but you know what? Teaching a grammar form at the end of the day has got exactly the same structure. So I would say, as long as you elicit the target language, elicit the form, concept check it, use a timeline, put that all into the presentation stage, allocate a good amount of time for it, and you'll be okay. Again, use the model. And yeah, timing with presentation stage, it does take a while. So I would say very often a presentation stage can be anything from 15 to 20 minutes sometimes. All right, let's see. So I've got another good question here from Once Upon a Tale. Have model assignments been provided for assignment B or also assignment A, and where can they be found? Right, so for assignment B, there is definitely a model assignment. So remember, this is on the level 5 course, but if you're doing the level 3 course, there's also a model assignment for you to look at when referring particularly to the grammar assignment. So yes, model assignments have been provided for assignment B, and you'll find it on the assignment page. So once you reach that point where you're ready to start your assignment and you have access to the assignment, it's on the assignment page. So you scroll down and you'll see templates. Those are the ones that you've got to fill out. And then just below the templates, I think, are all the models. And it'll clearly say in the name, model lesson plan, model PPP, model teacher language. And that's where you can get an idea of what we actually want in those templates. All right, I hope that helps. Right, so another question about resubmitting. Van Meyer has asked, if I fail my first attempt, should I keep the first attempt files in the upload box and add the second attempt files and upload them together? Should I clear the cache first? So basically, we want you to resubmit, not remove your old files, but to resubmit your files as a new attempt. Those instructions are on the website, on the assignment page, but of course, we forget things and you're bound to get stuck every now and then. Do send us a message at tutor support if you can't figure this out, but we do need your resubmit added as a new attempt. Remember to click save at the bottom of the page, because if you don't, your assignment doesn't join the marking queue. And that leads to people sending us tickets, sometimes irate tickets, asking us, it's been over your 5-day limit. Where is my assignment grade? And then we go into search for your assignment and we see that it actually hasn't been submitted correctly because you didn't click save right at the bottom. This is so important. All right. So also that brings me to another point. If you find yourself waiting a little bit longer than you're meant to wait, do send us a message at tutor support, because half of the time it's actually that you maybe haven't submitted in full, and we need to just remind you to do that so that we can see your assignment in the grading queue. All right. Okay, so this question I find, let me just display it on the board. Michael Dunn has asked, any suggestions for handling a wide range of abilities among students? Right. So of course, when you're working with a group of people, some of them have strengths and some of them have weaknesses. Some are very, very good at grammatical structures. Some are better at productive fluency exercises. And sometimes you might even be forced to teach 1 or 2 levels in one class. This happens, particularly in schools where there are not many teachers. So what happens here is that you've got to have a range of activities. And these activities need to go from standard, from your level, the class that you're teaching, to a little bit more challenging. And those students that finish quickly, that understand the work, you can get then, as the others are still doing their activity, you can give slightly more challenging activities to your stronger students. Also, if in a speaking activity, and you're giving them maybe discussion questions, which I love because they prompt very, very good conversation. But you know what? Start with nice, simple questions and then make the questions get increasingly difficult. And maybe tell certain students or a group of students to start there and start discussing those questions. Also, don't be tempted to put weaker and stronger students in the same groups. We think it's going to work, but very often the stronger students feel like they're having to almost assist you with teaching the weaker students. So my advice is to group them carefully, put students who have similar abilities in one group and give them something slightly, still reinforcing the target language, but something slightly more challenging to do in that activity. I hope this makes sense. All right. Okay, so we've got some more questions coming in. Lovely question here. Nice, easy one. So I think it's Nasi. Nasi wants to know, do we know the level of the students, right? How would we be aware of their exact knowledge of grammar? Fantastic question, because 1, we tell you the level of the students in the assignment instructions, and 2, we've actually told you what they already know. It's called assumed knowledge, and it's in the assignment notes. And Nasi, it tells you exactly what they know in terms of tenses and terminology. In other words, the tenses and terms that you can comfortably use when introducing the new target language. So we give you all that information because, of course, still having to research all that would just take years. So we provide all that information so that you can just start by planning your lesson. All right, and then I've got Another great question. I told you these questions would be coming in fast and furious. Right. So is dream holidays a good theme to base the first conditional lesson on? Thanks for the webinar. It's been very informative. I'm so happy to hear that. Told you it was going to be a good one. So I would say that dream holidays might evoke a feeling of fantasy and imaginary situations. In other words, the hypothetical. And remember that the first conditional is to talk about very realistic possible activities in the future. So, you know what I would do? I would just change that. I would tweak that a little bit and talk about the upcoming holidays. Just that, the upcoming holidays. What do you want to do for the upcoming holidays? What will be possible? Do you need to pass your exams first? Do you need to get a job to get some money? So those ideas are a lot more realistic for your students, and it'll help them understand the function of the target language so much better than something dream slash hypothetical slash imaginary. I hope that helps. Great question. All right. So I would like to know if I will make if I can make a detailed part of the first page of the PDF lessons, or if I could use PowerPoint. I would say just stick to using the templates as they come. Write all your information in there. Your board plan should not be a PowerPoint. We want it done on our template. However, Valentina, if you want to use a PowerPoint maybe for your activities, your controlled practice task, or a lovely picture or few pictures on a PowerPoint slide to prompt conversation during that production stage, then absolutely go for it. But remember that even the PowerPoint has got to be converted to PDF. So the PowerPoint slides will just look like PDF slides, and we'll still be able to see exactly what you want us to see. So the templates themselves, don't mess with that. Just type on them as they come. Anything supplementary you can put on onto a PowerPoint if you wish. All right, I hope that helps. I see a couple of questions coming in that relate maybe to your course or weekend courses, the classroom section of the course. Please remember that I will only be answering questions about today's topic. And if you do have any questions outside of today's topic, of course, you can send them to Tutor Support and we will help you. All right, a very useful question. Thank you very much, Kaiten. Kaiten asks, when it says we cannot use a video to present this form, what is meant by this? So remember, Kaiten, during the presentation stage, we need to see you as the teacher eliciting that model sentence. We need to see you clarifying form. We need to see you using concept checking questions. And a video very often does all that for you. So also what a video does is it exposes your students to the first conditional before you've even tried to elicit it. So I would say, yes, absolutely stick to that rule. Remove any ideas of videos from your presentation. If you do want to use one, maybe during the freer practice, maybe show them a short video clip and then ask them, okay, so this is what we're going to do the weekend. Now, make the plan, talk about the transport, then yes, I would say you could use it. But to teach the actual form, we do not want you to replace your teaching with a video that you found online. All right. Not even supplement your teaching. We'd like for you to be the only point of contact during the presentation stage. And we've done this because many schools going forward will not have access to technology and videos and so on, where you're going to be given a marker and a board. So we need for you to be able to teach from the ground up, understanding these techniques, and it gives us a very clear indication of whether you've understood them or not. All right. Okay, so a question relating to the teacher language file. The teacher language document, do we need to put the timing for each section? For example, how long will I take to elicit the target language? How long will I take to elicit the form? How long will I take to elicit to concept check the function? No, you do not. Because remember, this is just the dialogue that will be taking place during the presentation stage of your lesson. And your lesson plan has already notified us as to how long all these little things will take. So no, you can simply type your dialogue. And also remember that your dialogue should be simple. Don't make it too wordy. Don't make it too much teacher talk time. Just focus. Go straight into your context. Elicit the sentence. Elicit the form of that sentence and ask a few concept questions. All right. All right, so a good question here. Can I add my practice materials as an extra PDF, or should screenshots be taken of it and added to the materials file? So I would say, look, the first, I would say the simplest one, and to answer this question, is to put everything into the materials file clearly labeled. However, if you've got something additional that you'd like to put in your own file, yes, you can create another file, but make sure that it's so clearly labeled that your teacher, or your, sorry, not your teacher, your marker knows exactly which part of the lesson that particular material relates to. So absolutely, you can create another file. It's got to be, of course, PDF once you upload it. But yes, you can do that. But again, the keyword here, label your work clearly. All right. Okay, so we've got a few more questions coming in. Right. So Cecilia has asked whether the context of what I will do on the weekend is a nice context for the first conditional lesson. Absolutely. If you look at the age group of your students, you'll find that they're young, and at that age, they live for the weekend. And it engages them immediately. I mean, I'm a lot older and I live for the weekend. So I definitely think what you will do on the weekend, fantastic context. And it doesn't matter if it's been done before. It doesn't matter if you've seen a few examples on our site about the weekend. It's all right, because the way you teach it and the materials you use will be entirely different. So yes, great context, I think, for any age, but I think once you see the age group of the students that you're teaching, absolutely a great context. I know I would enjoy a lesson done on the weekend. I'd pay attention immediately. All right, and then we've got a question: how full should I think maybe how full should the board plan be? So remember, as I mentioned earlier, the board plan is pretty much a visual representation of what your students will see. Now, a cluttered board is very overwhelming for students. And that's why we have specified at the top of the board plan exactly what we need to see on the board. Of course, in a real classroom going forward, you will have maybe another board and another board, and you can add as much or as little as you wish. But for this assignment, stick to what is specified at the top, and that is the example sentence in positive form, in negative form, in question form. The form of that sentence, subject plus present simple plus, that's the form. And then maybe a few concept questions, because what we also need to see is a timeline. And your timeline has got to be there as a visual, not a description of a timeline, not an empty timeline with just past, now, and future. The actual picture that you will use in order to show students the form. So, oh, sorry, the function of your target language. So to answer the question, keep it simple. And then if there's anything else that you'd like to add, I would say then create a second board plan, maybe, if there's something you really want us to see, but then label it accordingly so that we know exactly what that is. All right. I'm actually going through some of the former questions because I think some of you typed your questions a little bit early on. So I'm going to see if I've missed any, but please, if you've got any questions about the assignment, now is the time to ask. I will be able to answer those questions immediately. And a question that came in earlier was, how long do I have to do the assignment? Now, remember that our individual assignments do not have, you don't have a deadline per individual assignment. Your assignment, your course has got to be completed within 6 months. And of course, if you're doing your course within 6 months, then obviously that's your only deadline. But something else that is quite important to remember, and this is with our course in general and assignments, is that your final assignment, so it depends on which course you're doing, but your final assignment must be submitted at least 2 weeks before your course ends. The reason for this, and also the fact that if you have to resubmit your assignment, then of course you're going to need a little bit more time. So 2 weeks before your course ends, that's when you will need to submit your assignment. Also remember that assignments can only be uploaded one at a time, which means if you upload assignment A, that assignment has to be marked and passed before you can submit or have access to the full instructions and submit assignment B. So please keep that in mind. But to answer the initial question that came in a little bit earlier, no, you do not need, the individual assignments do not have individual timelines or deadlines. All right. All right, so we've got a couple of questions here. Any advice on how to choose a country for this assignment? You know what, Kaiten, this is something that I wouldn't even overthink if I were you, because in some cases, going forward, you're going to have a multilingual class. In some cases, it's going to be a monolingual class. I would say the only thing that would affect this in real life going forward is, yes, some structures are similar in their language, or some words that you're going to use are similar in their language. But I would say, again, this shouldn't really affect your lesson. So you can choose the nationality. It will not make a difference. But remember, it's got to be a nationality where English is not the first language, and it has to be taught at the slow level that we have specified. All right, I hope that helps. Kaiten says, I tend to overthink, don't we all? Particularly when we're doing something new. So please don't worry about that. All right, so please, if there are any other questions, send them now. Write them in the chat. All right, so I've got a very important question here, and probably something I should have mentioned earlier. Valentina wants to know, can we send the exam? So I'm thinking you mean the assignment to a tutor before I'm not sure what that means, to public, not sure, for a first correction. Valentina, what I think you're asking is, can you send it to us to preview it, to check that you're on the right track, to just tell you whether what you're doing is correct? And unfortunately, no. We cannot preview assignments, because remember, we've given you 3 attempts to do the assignment. Your first and initial attempt, and then 2 resubmissions thereafter. And the minute we preview files for you, it kind of gives you an extra attempt that other students do not have. So to maintain fairness and to really make you feel autonomous and like you're doing the work yourself, we do not preview or approve or screen any files or any part of your assignment. What we can do is answer your questions. If you have a question, you can send it to tutor support. We can clarify the information. Or if you've received feedback from your tutor and you want to clarify the feedback, we can contact your tutor, we can check exactly what they mean, and we can send that right back to you. All right, I hope that helps. You're welcome. All right, if there are any other questions, send them now, and we will absolutely try and get to them. We've still got a couple of minutes to go. So if you've got questions, I can perhaps take one more, write it down, and I will try and get to your question. All right. And just a thank you for sending these questions. I think that they're valid, and I think they're so important, because if you're thinking about it and if you're doubting something and if you've got this question on your mind, 99% chance that someone else feels exactly the same way, has the same doubts, and really just wants to know what you're wanting to know. So absolutely. All right, so Heidi's got a question. What part to start, I think, with the assignment? All right, so Heidi, I would say because you've got the description of your class, because you've got the target language that you're meant to teach, and because you've got all the information you need to know before you start planning the lesson plan, it's a good place to start because it gives you an idea of what you want to do, and then you start collecting your materials, you start planning your dialogue. So I would say, Heidi, once you've downloaded the information, once you've read the notes on the first conditional, or once you've read the notes on the assignment, start thinking about the lesson plan first. Great jumping off point. All right. All right, so I've got a few more comments coming in. And you know what? Some of you are saying, being so stressed about assignment B, please don't be. That's why we're here. We want to help you. And like I say, I keep reminding people of this, is that our course has been designed for people who have not taught before. So we do understand that the instructions might be a little bit overwhelming, or that you might not know all the terminology. So absolutely, we're aware of this, and we want you to feel comfortable with the assignment. So if there's anything that you don't understand, send us a message at Tutor Support and we'll help you. All right. So please don't feel stressed about it and tackle it one section at a time. That's the best way to do the assignment. I see messages coming in saying, I feel better. I see messages coming in. I feel nervous. Watch this webinar again and again. Ask questions before you start planning and you'll be fine. All right. Okay, let's see. All right, you're welcome. Lots of thanks coming in. Absolutely. These webinars are meant to help you. So if you're feeling like it's helped you, fantastic. All right. Okay, so I think we've come to the end of our Q&A. I think we've come to the end of our webinar. Thank you for joining. It's been wonderful having all of you here. And remember, same time, same place next week. New webinars, new tutors, giving you lots of valuable information. And please remember that you can absolutely rewatch this one or any others that you find interesting or that you'd find helpful. If you can't find our webinar, send us a message on Tutor Support and we'll actually just send you the link and we'll tell you to enjoy the webinars. So absolutely send us a message, we'll send you the link, and then of course you can enjoy all the webinars that we've done for you. All right, so one last thing that I'm going to need from you is the survey. We do value your input and your feedback with the survey. All right, I've got some lovely messages coming in, and I do feel I want to read this one. I've put this off for 3 weeks now, says Heidi. You have motivated me to carry on and not feel stuck. Absolutely, it's an assignment. Just ask us questions, Heidi, and we'll help you, all right? And as you can see by the questions coming in and the comments coming in, lots of people that pretty much feel exactly the same way as you do, all right? Okay, so you're absolutely welcome. All the thanks coming in. I've got to say thank you to you for attending. You always make these fun. All right, so remember to fill in the survey. It's on the board. I'm going to make it nice and big now, but also I'm going to put it into the chat so that you can fill this in. And what I do appreciate is, tell us how you felt during the webinar. I think there's a section where you can give recommendations for topics. I'm not sure, I can't remember, but absolutely, please fill these in. All right, so enjoy the rest of your weekend. It's been wonderful spending time with you, and see you next time.